This Quietcast podcast is brought to you by Safe Space with Jackson. Hosted by author and podcaster Jackson Phoenix, Safe Space explores faith, deconstruction, spirituality, relationships, and the human experience through honest conversations and inspiring guests. If you're looking for thoughtful dialogue without the tribalism, this is the podcast for you. Listen now on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Amazon Music.
Welcome to the Unbelief Podcast, your journey, actually our journey together beyond inherited beliefs to a spirituality that works for you. I'm your host, Jeremy. I'm a deep skeptic, also a pastor. We can fix that later, right? No? Welcome to the Unbelief Podcast. I'm Jeremy, and today is a special treat. I have author Tim Schrader Rodriguez. He is a gay Christian writer, digital strategist, and advocate for queer people of faith. He's based in New York City, and this is, it's tragic, but the reality is he spent nearly a decade in conversion therapy while working behind the scenes with some of the biggest churches in America, Hillsong, Willow Creek, Elevation. But after embracing his identity and stepping away from church work, he co-founded Church Clarity, which is a really cool resource helping LGBTQ people and allies identify affirming faith communities. So welcome, Tim.
Thank you. So glad to be here.
And you have a book that is all over the interwebs and social medias. Can you tell us what that book is? And just a little bit about it.
Yeah, it's over my shoulder.
Yes.
Conversion Therapy Dropout, a queer story of faith and belonging is the
Brilliant title.
Very, very on the nose. And it's the story of my time in conversion therapy, but also what life was like after and how I've come to keep my faith without losing my soul.
I love that. Like, that description is beautiful and tragic. And your book is just sort of it's almost like a memoir, an autobiography. And I feel like it's super accessible to everybody. And I love, one of the things that I find is that hearing other people's stories helps us understand our own story, our own place where we are, even if it's not on the same path. And so I think this is just such a brilliant book in the way you approach all of the issues through your own story. So it's just a gift.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
So tell me, you grew up in Peoria, Illinois, right?
Yes.
Tell me about Peoria.
You know, it's the all-American city. Like during the vaudeville era, there was a saying, Groucho Marx said, if it plays in Peoria, it will play anywhere.
Okay.
And it sort of was this like test market for shows, for products, for, political candidates who wanted to test out their speeches. It was sort of this idea that it's kind of the average all-American city. And so if you can if something can make it there, it can make it anywhere. And so I grew up there. It's a small town in the middle of Illinois, very like blue collar, very Midwestern, very evangelical. And so that was a unfortunate place for a young queer kid in the making to call home.
Yeah, you're not wrong. And you were adopted, right?
Yeah,
we shared that. I'm also adopted.
Oh, no way.
Which has its own beauty and trauma with it.
Yeah, that's my next book.
I can't wait to read that one. I also grew up in this like weird, in the Alabama part of Florida, and growing up as a queer kid in that area, like I wasn't even a queer kid. Like I was just told it was a temptation. Like you couldn't even be queer, right?
Yeah.
So was that what it was like in Peoria?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I was so in the closet. Well, I mean, and I didn't have the language for it. I didn't, I was shielded from anything queer. Like that was just not on the map. And yet it was still in here. I just didn't have a name or a label for it yet.
Yeah, we had one gay bar in our area, and it was like so scary. Like I
Mhm.
wouldn't even drive past it. And like it was the den of sin. Like it was just
Totally.
I can't even there's no way to over
Yeah.
describe how evil it was
Mhm.
characterized as in my faith communities.
Oh yeah, like and similarly, when Ellen DeGeneres came out
Oh
on
God.
TV, like in the late '90s,
Yeah.
like our church literally like passed out a petition and everybody signed it to
Mhm.
like ask the local ABC affiliate to like show it later at night or just pull it
Same.
off the air altogether.
We had
So
the same petition. Oh my God.
yeah.
Uh, well, tell me about that. How did the faith stuff start for you?
It started very young. I mean, I was raised in church. My family was, in church all the time. And
Mhm.
it became more important for me the older I got.
Yeah.
As you said, I'm adopted, but I met my biological family for the first
Uh,
time when I was 9 years old, and they lived in Peoria too. And
uh,
so I kind of lived in this weird space between two families,
yeah.
which at its like it was great most
Mhm.
days, but it was also incredibly difficult. And as a kid, I didn't know how to handle all of those complex emotions. I
Of
just
course
knew
not.
that I didn't feel like I fully belonged to either of my families because
Mhm.
in both families I was the adopted one. And
Uh-huh.
so church oddly kind of became this safe space for me. And, again, growing up in the Midwest where, all the boys played sports and did all those kinds of things,
Mhm.
church became a place where I could kind of at least feel some expression of myself come through. And we went to a charismatic church,
Yeah. Yeah.
Assemblies of God. And so, it was very, it was good to be emotional. It was good to be
Yeah.
dramatic. It was okay to want to sing and dance and do all those kinds of things.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of a perfect place for me to hide out while I was figuring out exactly who I was.
Yeah, I grew up in this like mainline denomination, but in that part, it really didn't matter what was on the sign. Like everybody was like conservative Southern Baptist.
Yeah.
But then in early high school, I discovered the charismatic movement and kept going to my youth group, but also went to all these other things. There was an after school um, prayer meeting at this woman's house, and Tim, it is probably the gayest thing I've ever been a part of. Like, we went over there, they had streamers, they had
Oh,
tambourines, we
yes.
sang and danced, and it was like so free because, like, it
Mhm.
couldn't be that way. You would be called, all kinds of derogatory
Oh,
terms
yeah.
in
Yeah.
the rest of my life. But like there, I got to dance and prance and frolic with
Mm.
the streamer. I mean,
Yes.
it was just so wonderful. But I'll never
Oh.
forget, there was this kid who was there. We went to different schools, but he was there every week.
Mm.
And then for a couple of weeks, he wasn't there. And so I asked the woman whose house it was, and she was like, well, come here, come here, come here. And she took me just off of the room that we were having the gay dancing. And she was like, well, we'll just call him David. Well,
Mhm.
you just need to know that David told me that he was struggling with
Yes.
homosexuality. So,
Yeah.
and then she walked out. Like, and I was like, like the
And
evangelical mafia came and took him. Like,
yeah.
I don't know. And I never saw
Yeah.
him again.
Mhm.
Um, yeah. So, but it was so freeing. And I was the same. I lived in a town that was all sports for boys and
Mhm.
football and everything. And I hated sports and I loved musical theater.
Mhm.
And I was in show
Same.
choir, and like I remember, like I was the actor kid in town, and so like if the community college had a kid role, I would get to play it.
Nice.
Like I learned how to put on makeup way before any of the girls, and so like there was a couple. So when we had like school shows and stuff, like I would help them with their eyeliner and like,
Oh.
and I say all of that, and as I'm saying it, I'm like, how was I not able to come out to myself? Right?
Yeah.
I had
Yeah.
all of the signs. Like I had all of
Mhm.
the things.
Yep.
Yeah. So you're in this space.
Hmm.
and you feel like you can be yourself. But what is yourself? Like, what
Yeah.
is the identity that you were having in that moment?
You know, I definitely knew that I loved God. I
Hmm.
loved the church. I loved feeling like I was a part of something bigger than myself. I liked the sense of belonging that church gave me, my youth group gave me. And it was
Hmm.
a youth group of like 300 kids. So it was
Yeah.
like a church within a church.
Yeah.
And I became like my youth group graphic designer. And so I was like being creative and expressive that way and
Yeah.
like got to do the slides and like all the
Yeah.
PowerPoint, and so I felt like I was contributing and like making a difference. And so and that skill set that I learned in youth group is, what I do for my career today. I'm
Yeah.
in corporate marketing. And so it was a really formative time of my life. And I would say that similarly to your experience, there were a couple of kids who were in the youth group or who had graduated and gone away to college. And there started to be whispered conversations about them
Hmm.
and their proclivities. And I
Hmm.
remember just the fear of God that came into my heart,
Yeah.
hearing those stories, because I knew I was like them. And
Yeah.
I knew that that same thing was in me. And so, but also didn't feel safe to talk about it. Did not, I mean, I couldn't even admit it to myself,
Right.
hardly imagine telling another adult about it, especially seeing how the church had responded or the kids in the youth group would joke or make fun of those kids. And I would
Yeah.
join in that too,
Oh yeah.
trying to like be one of the people. And so I just decided like, this is going to be something I'm going to fight on my own. I'm
Hmm.
going to pray about this. And then the charismatic in me was like, well, God can do anything. God can
Yeah.
set people free. We
God
went
can
to the,
deliver me.
yeah. So we went to like the Brownsville revival in
Yep, I went
Pensacola.
there. I was there the week it started,
Oh
and
my
the week
gosh.
before, the 3 weeks before it started, the guy who started it there was in my
Yeah.
city, and the same thing was happening. So I had seen him in my
No
city. He was
way.
going to Brownsville, and I had
Yeah.
friends there, and they were like, "Oh my gosh, there's this revival!" And so I got in the
Yeah.
car and drove over. Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, I was. I never. one of my experiences was I went to the Brownsville revival, and I had been looking at like gay porn, and I went forward with the like I need to be delivered of this,
Hmm.
and he prayed for me. I fell down, and I just remember
Hmm.
like praying and begging that the Holy Spirit would burn all of
Yep.
this out of me.
Yep. Same. Absolute same. And it didn't work. I
Mm,
was still, it was still there. And so I didn't feel safe. I mean, there was
yeah.
just no safe space for me to talk about this. And it says eventually your secrets will find you out, and mine did. I was
Mhm.
19. I had been working with my youth pastor. I didn't go to college. I like
Mhm.
launched straight into ministry,
Uh-huh.
and my youth pastor had found my internet search history and
How
confronted me.
did he find your internet search history?
Well, he borrowed my computer. So like I was living with him and his family,
Okay.
and like he left his laptop at the church and he needed to do something, and so he got
Uh-huh.
on my computer, and then either I didn't close out a window or maybe he was just, fishing for information.
Yeah.
But either way, I got called into the church office with him and the lead pastor of the church, and there was a file folder with my internet search history
Oh
printed
my
off.
God.
Yeah.
They
And they're
like
like,
printed it out.
yeah. And they're like, we need to talk about this. And it was simultaneously like the most humiliating moment of my
Yeah.
life, but also it felt like a relief that I could finally talk about it and that I
Yeah.
could say, like, yeah, I am struggling with this. I don't know what to do. I've done everything that I know how.
Hmm.
And really kind of pled my case. Like, this is not something I've actively been engaged in. It's just been online stuff, but I don't know what to do.
Hmm.
And they shifted immediately into like price crisis PR mode and asked, like, well, did you do anything with any of the kids in the youth group? Is
Oh,
there
geez.
anything that we should know? Like, if this, and it quickly just spun into this: if the church found out about this, if
Yeah.
families in the church found out about this, it's going to become a bigger issue for you and it's going to become a bigger issue for our church. So you got to get out of here tonight. You have to like leave. And I
Tonight.
was, yeah. And I
Oh,
was living in Washington State at the
mhm.
time. And so, I mean, like going home meant going back to Illinois. And so, very long story short, that youth pastor who was the one that taught me graphic design, all those
Mhm.
things, drove me to this hotel by the Portland airport and paid for my hotel room for a few nights and said, like, there's no place for people like you in ministry. You're
Oh my
broken.
God.
You don't have a future in this unless you get better. And
Oh,
so you've got to pray that God changes your heart. And like a lot of other things that I just kind of like filtered
oh,
out, but
geez.
um
That is
left.
awful.
Yeah.
Like,
And I was 19.
yeah. And then he left, and you're just there in this hotel.
Hmm.
What
For
happened in the hotel? Like, when he left, like, did you just completely fall apart? Like,
of
what was going
course.
on?
Yeah. I mean, my older brother was going to fly out to drive home with me to make the trip home. So I had like 5 days. He dropped me off on a Sunday and my brother was flying out on Thursday. And so I collapsed into myself. I mean, I
Yeah.
was like, well, this is a person who was a hero in my book. This
Mm.
is, someone I looked up to. This is what I thought I was going to do with my life. I thought I was doing the right thing. And now the place that I love the most and the place that I found connection and belonging and where I feel like I have a purpose is saying, like, you don't belong here. There's not space
Uh,
for people like you. And so there was definitely like a moment where maybe I should just peace out and, end my life kind of
yeah.
crossed my mind.
Of course.
But I remembered seeing books about you don't have to be gay, or like I didn't know what conversion therapy was, but I
Right.
remember seeing books on the shelf at the Christian bookstore saying like this is a resource to help people that are struggling with same-sex attraction.
Hmm.
And so I drove to a Christian bookstore in Portland and bought one of the books and spent an entire day reading it cover to cover. And the book kind of
Do you remember
outlined
which one it was?
I do. It's called Growth into Manhood. It's out
Oof.
of print now, and you can't buy it on Amazon. But
Good. Good.
it kind of spelled out the core tenets and beliefs of conversion therapy, which
Yeah.
are essentially that like if you're struggling with your sexuality, it's a breakdown of something that happened when you were
Hmm.
younger, that it's the result of trauma, that if you
Hmm.
repair those things, if you act like a man and kind of fake your way into it, and also pray for God to help you, you can change. And so,
Hmm.
as a 19-year-old kid who was confused and didn't think there was any other option,
Right. Yeah.
felt like, well, this makes sense. And
Yeah.
in the back of the book was a phone number to call Exodus International, which was the
Mhm.
biggest conversion therapy organization at the time.
Yeah.
And so I picked up the phone and said, hey, like, I don't want to be like this. And they said they could help me. And so I didn't
Mm.
know then, but that was going to alter the next almost decade of my life as I started to kind of tiptoe into the world of conversion therapy. And yeah, it was a desperate choice in a desperate moment. And
Yeah. Oh,
yeah.
I just, I don't know. Like, that hits so hard. All of that, like, so many levels of evil in that
Mhm.
moment. So you said you sort of tiptoed into conversion therapy. How did you start? Where did it go?
Yeah. All over the place. Initially I was going home to Peoria, and so the closest ministry or
Hmm.
organization that was nearby was like 3 hours away.
Oh, well.
And I was like, that's too far. But
Hmm.
there was an online support group based out of an organization in Dallas that is
Okay.
still active
Oh,
today, which
God.
is
What is
crazy.
it?
It's called Living Hope.
Okay.
And if you check out the documentary Pray Away on
Uh
Netflix,
huh.
Living Hope is profiled in it, but it's
Oh,
still a lot of people's entry point into conversion therapy because it's like an online based support group. It's like
hmm.
forum based, like very early
Yeah.
2000 vibes. But for a lot of young people who are reaching out to organizations like Exodus for help, it's kind of the first place they point you. And so
Yeah.
I log on to that. I start to read a lot of people's stories that are like mine, start to have a lot of identification with the things that people are saying,
Hmm.
reading things that the forum moderators are posting and that Living Hope is sharing to say, like, here's how you can do this. And it just started to kind of absorb all those messages. And
Yeah.
then obviously getting to know people on screen is one thing. And like we weren't allowed to, this was again early 2000s,
Yeah.
pre-social media, but we weren't allowed to direct message the people through the forums. We weren't allowed to share our AOL screen names. Like every bit of
Yeah.
communication that we had was contained to this forum that was protected. And
Mm-hmm.
we weren't allowed to give personal identifying information about one another or post photos. So the one thing we could do though was go to this retreat that the organization hosted.
Okay.
So I went to that, and that was my first time being in the
Yeah.
same room with other people like me. And
Wow.
it was such an incredible experience. Like I
Yeah.
didn't know it then, but like it was the first time I ever experienced queer community, that I was
Mhm.
with other people. And like, even though we were in an environment that was trying to get us to not be like ourselves,
Yeah.
like I could at least go into that space and not have to like have all of this guard up and all these fake mannerisms. Like I could just sort of let my real self
Mm.
show and like find other people that were like that. And that experience really kind of cemented with me the idea that this could work, because
Mhm.
there were about 100 other young people there. There were people who were sharing their testimonies of like how they had changed. And so even if there were things about it that didn't set well with me, or things that I was starting to like, I don't know about this, like
Yeah.
the fact that there were so many other people excited about it, I was like, well, then how could I question this? And
Right.
so coming back from that, I started going.
Were there any like things besides like testimonies that you had at that retreat? Like, did you have one-on-ones? Did you have like actual conversion therapy technique stuff happening?
So there was a lot of sessions. There were like a lot of like workshops and
Yeah.
things that would teach us what were conversion therapy ideas. So like
Yeah.
how to be a man, how to form healthy relationships, how to
And
heal
how do
your
you
father
how do you
wounds.
be a man? How is
Yeah.
that?
Well,
Can you please
for
enlighten
part
us?
for part of that, they had the local high school football coach come out and tell us how to throw a football and
You
like
are
the
kidding
rules of,
me.
no, dead serious, absolutely serious. And like part of like the healing exercises were us like playing football. And the whole idea was, you've probably been traumatized or scared to do this. And so we're going to show you how to do it, and you're going to face your fears, and we're going to teach you how to throw a football. And like,
And
it was,
be a man. But
that's how you're going to
was
be a
it
man.
tackle? That's the real question.
Well, I don't know. I think it was like flag football, so we weren't like tackling each other.
Yeah.
But and on the reverse side of that, for the girls, they had the Mary Kay consultant come
Oh
out
my
and
God. Oh,
do some makeovers. Here's how to make yourself look pretty. Like it was so backwards and like stupid, but we were all young and naive and desperate, and we're
yeah.
like, okay, if this is what it takes, like we'll
Yeah.
go for it.
I'll
And
learn
I
how to
think
throw a football.
Yeah, and I think that that's part of the thing that a lot of people misunderstand about conversion therapy is they
Mhm.
think that it's this like torturous, and it is, but
Yeah.
it's not.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel like it. It's very
Mhm.
insidious. It's very
Yeah.
like, oh, it's just do this, just do that, change this, change your voice, change your
Mhm.
mannerisms. Like it's a lot of behavior modification and
Yeah.
a lot of like, okay, you change your external, God will change your internal,
Mhm.
and hopefully you'll find a woman that you're eventually attracted to that you can get married to. But what that all does though is just make us super hyper vigilant, like questioning every motive, every
Mhm.
why did I think that? Why do I feel that way? Because they would
Yeah.
tell us like your first thought and your first instinct is
Take
the
your
wrong
thoughts
instinct.
captive to Christ.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
so, if you find yourself looking at a guy for too long, or if you find yourself wandering
Mhm.
the internet, like, what's that about? What's driving that? What about that
Mhm.
man are you missing in your own life? Like, and
Yeah.
they would say, like, our lust or our
Mhm.
attraction to other men was rooted in a deficiency that we saw in ourselves. So me
Mhm.
getting googly eyed over a muscly guy is just because he's more manly than I am, and he has a
Mhm.
masculinity that I wish I had. And so
Uh-huh.
like,
Oh
it
my
just
God.
makes it so like it's so dumb and crazy to talk about it now.
Yeah.
But that's what they were telling us. And another thing I would say about it is there was no like manual for conversion therapy. There were no like
Yeah.
certifications. There were just lots of loosely held pseudo psychological ideas
Yeah.
that all these individual groups adopted. Like under the Exodus umbrella, they all
Mhm.
agreed it was a sin. It was possible for someone to change, that God could do anything.
Yeah.
But how all these different
Yeah.
organizations and ministries played that out looked very, very different depending
Yeah.
on where you landed. And so it was very confusing. And, it left all of us just kind of feeling like, "Ugh, I don't know if I'm getting this right."
Yeah.
But again, the group of it, I mean, I would eventually go to the Exodus conference and there would be
Mhm.
1,000 other people there. And
Mhm.
so just the sheer size and scope of it made anyone feel bad for questioning it, because it was like,
Yeah.
well, if they're all bought in, then if I'm the only person, then it's something wrong with me. Like, it's
Yeah.
not something wrong with the program.
Yeah. And I think that one of the pieces uh, about conversion therapy that that always that always sort of hits home with me is it sort of weaponizes your identity against yourself,
Hmm.
right? And
Yeah.
so anything that would be helpful in the sort of coming
Yes.
out to yourself, or that all of a sudden, instead of being helpful and healthy, is a source of pain and shame and
Hmm.
guilt. And I would say, like, self psychological violence, like
Oh,
psychological violence
yeah.
against myself, that I'm trained to do,
Totally.
and
Yes.
that is godly,
Hmm.
right?
Oh, yeah. It's like self-denial. It's what Jesus
Mhm.
said we should do, deny ourselves.
Oh my
So,
God.
and it's
And the
all like
heart is
acts.
deceitful above all
Exactly.
else.
Yes. Yeah. And then what that does too is like, okay, we know it doesn't work.
Right.
The
Never.
Exodus shut down. All of the original leaders of
Yep.
these organizations and ministries have come out
Right.
and have said this is harmful. But when a person leaves conversion therapy, it doesn't
Mhm.
mean that they're magically better or that they're
No.
suddenly free, because we were taught to be ashamed of ourselves, and
Yeah.
we were taught to fear queer community and the actual
Yes.
places that could help us. And
Yeah.
especially because so much of conversion therapy happens in therapists' offices,
Hmm.
that, like, to the idea of going to another therapist for me and for a lot of my friends did not feel like a safe option, because
Right.
that safe space had been violated by people
Yeah.
who were listening to us week after week, but like weaponizing everything that we shared against us. And
Hmm.
so, we were always warned in conversion therapy that if we embraced the lifestyle,
Hmm.
that, it would lead to death and destruction and addiction and all of these like horrible things.
Yeah.
And that what is true for a lot of people who leave conversion therapy, but
Hmm.
it's not because they've embraced the lifestyle. It's because of
No.
all of the shame and all of the self-hatred that they've inherited and toxic beliefs that they've inherited as a result of being in conversion therapy and not knowing how to transition out of that into a healthy understanding of who they are.
Yeah. And, when you talk about those things, all of the things, um, if you ever study brainwashing techniques,
Hmm.
all
Hmm.
of that is brainwashing, like,
Yep.
cutting off contact to
Hmm.
outside people, to people
Yep.
who have different ideas,
Hmm.
internalizing, like all of those things. It's awful. But so tell me what it was like in a therapist's office.
I mean, I still go to therapy today.
Oh,
I
yeah.
mean,
No,
so
same.
I mean, honestly, it felt the same. Like,
Mm.
it was not this like it didn't feel off. I
Hmm.
mean, and that's like the scariest part, because
Yeah.
I mean, as we said, I was adopted. I met my biological family. I didn't feel like I fully belonged to either. So like
Right.
there was stuff I needed to talk about. There were
Oh,
things
yeah.
that I
No.
needed to process. And so I would show up for my sessions and we would talk about those things.
Hmm.
But then it would have a little shift at the end to be like,
Uh-huh.
so it sounds to me like, you're really like looking for connection to a father figure you never
Hmm.
had. And maybe, your homosexuality and this struggle is really just rooted in you feeling like there's a man that's going to give you
Hmm.
that. That's a legitimate need to
Yeah.
have a father. Like, that's real. But that got confused when you went through puberty. And so that legitimate need that you have has become sexualized. And that's the
Yeah.
work of the enemy. But like, how can we find you a father figure? Or how can we find a man who's going to give you that love that you didn't have, but in a way that is not sexual, in a way that's going
Hmm.
to help, and so like I would leave with this checklist of like, okay, find a straight man who has never struggled with homosexuality, who can model for me what a healthy male relationship looks like. And
Right.
then when that legitimate emotional need is met in a non-sexual way, I'm going to magically get better.
Right.
But what that would turn into is me like trying to find any straight man in my church that would give me attention, and then,
Hmm.
like hoping that he would be the one that was going to save me. And then I would get into these like emotionally enmeshed relationships that were
Yeah.
one-sided. And, I couldn't call it unrequited love
Right.
because that would be wrong. But
Yeah.
they would, meet a woman or, get married, and then I would feel like heartbroken, but I couldn't
Yeah.
say it
Oh, yeah.
because it was like, well, I let that go too far.
I had
So,
so many of those experiences.
yeah.
It's crushing. Like, so tell me, you talked about behavior modification.
Mhm.
What were some of the things that you tried to modify about yourself to, if you fix the outside, the inside
Mhm.
follows. What were some of those things for you?
Yeah, I definitely like learning how to lower your voice and like talk like a normal guy. Like there was definitely a way of I used to be super expressive and like I am now, but
Hmm.
that was like don't do that. Like guys don't act like that. Guys don't get excited. They don't clap their hands like that. Like they're
Right. Yeah.
so, it's like lower your voice, like square your shoulders.
Yeah. Hmm.
There was that dynamic of it. There was just the clothing you wear, like don't be too expressive with your fashion, and like don't
Right.
like don't dress like gay people.
Right.
Also
Yeah.
just the media you consume. So I mean, as much as they were trying to shield us from gay people in general, it was like
Hmm.
don't let anything that remotely affirms the gay
No will and
lifestyle.
grace.
No will
Right.
and grace,
Yeah.
none of that. Like anything that celebrates the lifestyle is out.
Hmm.
And I mean, secular music was also one
Yep.
thing just in general, but also like it got to where, one therapist said only listen to music that has a male vocal lead singer.
Wow.
No pop divas, no female ensemble groups. Like you
Wow.
got to have men's music. Like,
Oh,
and it was
geez.
just all of these like harsh things that were really just reinforcing harmful gender stereotypes, right? Like this is what a man does.
Right.
And so I would like go to, these sports bars with the guys from my church to watch football games that I did not care about in my Old
Uh-huh.
Navy cargo pants and polo shirt.
Mm.
And, couldn't
That
wear the
that may be the most tragic thing of
right.
all. Oh my
Yeah.
God,
And
the
I
cargo
couldn't wear
shorts.
and I couldn't wear my puka shell necklace because
Can
that's
we
too
can
gay.
we just draw the line at cargo shorts? Good
Right.
God.
Although they are coming back now. But anyway, like
Yes. Yeah. Fair.
but back then, no. So it's just like I was performing. I was performing a version
Hmm.
of myself and of whatever was deemed masculine,
Right.
and would leave the therapist's office or the sports bar and feel like a shell of a person.
Yeah.
And, and the whole time I'm doing all of this, I'm working in churches too.
Right.
So, if anyone should have been set up for success,
Oh, right. For
I'm in
sure.
it.
So
I was in a space where I couldn't fail.
yeah. So obviously it didn't work. Um, when was the point where it started to break down?
Yeah. Um, I think all along I was
Hmm.
questioning. Like I definitely had like my arms crossed in the back
Hmm.
of I don't know.
Yeah.
But it was it after about 4 years in it,
Hmm.
and then starting to see people that I had met in my time
Hmm.
falling away. I
Right.
mean, the people that I knew that were still in it after all of that time was diminishing
Hmm.
compared to everyone else that, I was told to cut off contact with and
Yeah.
unfriend and not have in my life. And then I think when I realized it wasn't working,
Hmm.
rather than questioning the program, I was like, well,
Right.
then there's something fatally wrong with
Of
me.
course.
Like there's just something very off, and maybe I'm just so broken, and if it's not changing, then maybe that's not in the cards for me, but maybe a life of commitment to Christ and being celibate the rest of my life
Right.
is the way to go. And I was getting successful in
Yeah.
ministry. Like
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
was doing cool things. I was working
Yeah.
with big churches. And I thought, well, like maybe that's the consolation. Like maybe
Yeah.
I can be fully devoted to this work. And, that it was singleness was good enough for Jesus and the disciples. So like maybe it's going to be good enough for me. But just the weight of all of that
Hmm.
was, insurmountable. And I went to a big Christian conference, and Mark Driscoll was speaking.
Oh God.
And, this was in the ire of a lot of the gay rights and gay marriage conversation. And so his message obviously was we need men to men up, no sissies in church. We need to
Oh,
stand for biblical truth,
Jesus.
And so I'm sitting in that conference being paid to tweet it
Oh
and
God.
watching the arena of people around me like stand to their feet and amen it and like all these things and
Mhm.
just sitting there like, if these people knew about
Mhm.
me, the truth about me, um,
Mhm.
I would be out of a job. I
Yeah.
would lose my community. Like this all would go away. And that all caught up with me in the form of a nervous breakdown.
Yeah.
And I really was just confronted with, all right, this isn't going to work. But I don't know what my other options are because the only option I'd ever been presented was either choose your spirituality or choose your sexuality. And I
Mhm.
didn't know that there was a world. I mean, I had read about pro gay theology, I
Right.
knew about QCF and other organizations that were working with LGBTQ Christians, but I was so scared away from those things and
Mhm.
told that they were deceitful, that they were harming people, that it was, blasphemy, like all of those things. And so I thought maybe I just need to check out. Maybe I need to
Yeah.
just end my life rather than keep living it this way.
Oh, baby.
And thankfully I didn't. And
Yeah.
I, went to a real doctor and said, I don't know what's
Good.
going on. And he's like, you're having a nervous breakdown.
Mhm.
What's going on? And I said, well, I've been in conversion therapy for 8 years.
Mhm.
And the doctor was gay. He had a little rainbow
Oh.
lapel pin. And
Mm.
it was a really special moment. He's like, you're going to be okay. Like you're going to be okay. And that was the first time. I was 28, that I actually believed that I was going to be okay.
Oh, wow.
And like I said, like that decision did not mean that life got better instantly or that I
No, of course
became
not.
my best gay self.
Right.
That took a long time and a lot of healing and a lot of acceptance, but it began that journey.
Yeah. So so you obviously ended up coming out. Yeah, I'm assuming you lost your job when you came out.
Mm, No, actually.
Really?
No.
Let's hear that story.
So I left the church I was working at
Okay.
of my own volition, and they knew that I was in conversion therapy. I had shared my ex-gay testimony at that
Mhm.
church in front of our congregation. So like that part of my life was not secret from anyone, but
Mhm.
my decision to leave conversion therapy kind of marked the beginning of the end in that community
Yeah.
because the pastor said, hey, like, I don't care. Like, I'm sorry. I wish I could take this away from you. Obviously, I can't. I know you've tried your hardest. So he's like, the only time that my employment there was going to be in question was if I wanted to be in a committed relationship with someone.
Yeah.
And I was nowhere near ready for that
Right.
yet anyway, but I was definitely ready to start exploring.
Yeah.
And so I started to and
Mhm.
knew that like there was an end date coming, but I had a skill set that a lot of churches
Yeah. Right.
valued and needed. And I realized I could start to consult with churches or
Mhm.
just kind of be this like fly in, fly out, contractor and not have to sign morality clauses or belief
Yeah.
statements and not have my personal life under a microscope. And so
Mhm.
I continued the work in churches, but also moved to Boys Town, Chicago's gay neighborhood,
Yes, I've been
and
there.
started to figure out, okay, like what does life look like for me as a gay person, but was
Ugh.
also still working in these churches. And I think
Mhm.
it was kind of a double-edged sword. Like I needed
Yeah.
the check, like, and it was
Oh,
the
of
only work
course.
I'd ever known. So I couldn't imagine how my skill set was going to translate outside of the church. But also I thought maybe my presence in these spaces and my
Mhm.
proximity to some of these leaders who are leading massive congregations and movements, maybe I can help change the conversation for LGBTQ
Yeah.
people if I stick with it. And so I did that until
Yeah.
it was actually 2016. It was which we recently just had the 10-year anniversary of the
Mhm.
Pulse Orlando shooting.
Ugh,
And
yeah.
and that was a big moment for me because I was working with a lot of churches at this time. And we had a playbook whenever there was a national or major tragedy. Like, okay,
Thoughts and
don't,
prayers, you know.
yeah, stop posting anything, do your thoughts and
Mhm.
prayers, acknowledge what happened, and like
Yeah.
give it a couple days, and then you can resume posting about the women's Bible study or
Right.
whatever.
Right.
And so I that morning sent out that note to all these churches I was working with,
Mhm.
and all of them stopped posting for sure, but only one of them posted anything
Oh
acknowledging what
God.
happened. And that was kind of when I realized I don't think I'm making as much of a change as I thought I was.
Right.
And also, that was the lead up to the 2016 election, and
Mhm.
where a lot of churches were traditionally really like mum is the word around anything
Mhm.
political, felt emboldened to finally start speaking
Yeah,
out
that's
about
powerful.
things.
Yeah.
And that was kind of my moment. I knew it was time for me to try to imagine life outside of those spaces, or how I could
Yeah.
make an impact outside of the church walls.
Yeah. That was my moment to I uh I was working at a mega church in Alabama, and it was actually in the city where Trump had his first rally, and Jeff Sessions lived there and would
Mhm.
bring food to the college ministry, like um but when he announced his candidacy, it was like almost a light switch. Like it was a 180, and people just became these horrible people.
Mhm.
And I was like, wait a second, you've been pretending this whole time? And I was the pastor of the contemporary worship services, and I had been doing all of this work, like I thought, behind the scenes to
Yeah.
shift. And it turned out that nothing I had done had mattered.
Mm.
And so I moved to Silicon Valley to be a pastor there at a obviously a very progressive, affirming church, and did an app. Um,
Mm.
so uh, so then you eventually found this organization, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
Tell us
Yeah.
tell us about this, great, because I love what you're doing, because um a lot, like, this is a perfect example, right?
Mm.
Pulse happens, people don't say
Mhm.
anything because a lot of them just don't ever say anything. They have like
Mhm.
homophobic beliefs, but they don't put it anywhere. You can't find it
Mhm.
anywhere. And it's like a bait and switch, because a lot of them are like, everybody is welcome, all are welcome, a church
Yep.
for people who were hurt by churches. And oh my
Yes.
God, queer people are hurt by churches. You say a church for people who hurt by churches? Okay, maybe
Yeah.
I'll try that out. Like I had a friend who was walking through a mall, and there's a mall church, and it has one of these signs, and he messaged me and he said, I'm thinking I might try this church out. He hasn't gone to a
Mm.
Christian church in
Yeah.
probably 30 years. And so I did a bunch of research, and I said, actually, they
Mhm.
hate queer people.
Yeah.
And that was it for
Mhm.
him.
Mhm.
Like he
Mhm.
had gotten to a place where he might go.
Yep.
But the fact that they said that and they believed that,
Yep.
um, that was it. He's
Mhm.
done. He's never
Yeah.
trying.
Yeah. Yep.
And so that's, I think, one of the things I love about what you're doing.
Mhm. Yeah. Well, I mean, that's case in point
Right.
why we wanted to start Church Clarity. I think for me, I was very well aware when I was working in these churches where they stood on things, like,
Hmm.
and I was willing to kind of exist in these spaces, hoping I was going to affect change. But coming out of those churches, I was like, well, I still spirituality is still important to me. I want to have a church community to belong to.
Hmm.
And, I think one thing a lot of progressive churches or churches that have historically been very affirming from the beginning or for a
Hmm.
long time would think that seeing a rainbow flag on a church would indicate safety to someone
Nope.
like me, but it doesn't.
Yeah.
And it wasn't that I did go to a number of those churches in Chicago, and I was so glad that they existed. I was
Hmm.
glad to see the queer community that was thriving there, but it was just such a departure from what I was used to, what I was
Yeah.
accustomed to. Where, I was in these churches that were so non-affirming, that to swing the pendulum to the other side where it was like inclusive of everything. I was like, I'm not there yet. And like I would be today, but like back then I was like, I need to be at a church that's like at a 4 or 5, not a 10. And so I started looking for a church, and there were plenty of churches that looked progressive, that, had gay people, obviously gay people on stage singing with the worship team or volunteering, or, it was just kind of like, well, there's a lot of gay people here, so they must be cool with it. And one church in particular, when the Pulse shooting happened, had a member of their church community who was gay get up and offer a prayer. So like all signs pointing like this should be a safe space. That same person had met someone, another gay man who went to that church while they were both volunteering in the coffee shop or something. And their relationship blossomed, and they were both plugged into the church. They were very involved, very well known, very loved. And so they finally get engaged. And it's not until they signed up for the church's premarital course that they got the word, hey. Well, initially it was, hey, like, we're so excited for you, but like, we've realized that our, marriage course is very like male female. And so rather than have you join that class, we're going to just have you do a couple special sessions separate from that group with our pastor. And they're like, that doesn't feel great, but okay. And then in that first session, the pastor says, we're really happy for you, but I'm not going to be able to marry you, nor will any pastor from this church, and you cannot get married here. And I mean, talk about devastating. And so I had that experience in my own life of people I love, and also me searching for these churches. And then I got connected with a guy named George, who was a pastor of a church in Seattle that had become gay affirming and had gone through that process. And then Kai, who was an investigative journalist who had a theological background. And so the three of us got together and said, how can we try to fix this? And obviously, asking churches to change their theology and become gay affirming is a very long process. And a lot of churches are not going to get there. But we wanted to create a resource to help LGBTQ people at least know the truth about the spiritual communities in their community and what they believe. And so, coming from my church background of church marketing, the message I always preached to churches when I was consulting on digital marketing was, your church website is the front door of your church. And so you need to put everything on your website that people need to know to make informed decisions of whether or not this is a church community that they want to be a part of. And so kind of borrowed a page from that playbook and said, someone should be able to know, based on what a church publicly discloses on their website, whether or not they're gay affirming or what their stance is, not even that. And so we started scoring churches, just like scouring the websites, reading their policy papers, listening to the sermons, looking for the pre-marriage courses, like just trying to find any morsel of whatever we could find to say like, oh, this church appears to be non-affirming, or this church appears to be affirming. And so we scored the churches based on the level of clarity. And so with that rubric, it's a little confusing, but it makes sense that a church like Westboro Baptist, that is kind of the infamous God hates fags church, if you can call it a church, they score very well on church clarity, because they are very clear about, what you're getting into if you go there. Whereas this church in Chicago, unclear, because you couldn't find anything about their stance on LGBTQ issues on their website. And so the idea was, we want to create this metric in this way to help LGBTQ people navigate towards safe spaces, but also hold these churches accountable for how clear they are on these policies and these, doctrinal beliefs that really do have strong implication for the queer community. And so we launched it. It's had many iterations since. I'm part of the board now, that's kind of reforming and reshaping what the future of it looks like. But there are still queer people looking for faith communities. And even as the rise of Christian nationalism has happened and churches are becoming a little bit more outspoken, there's still so much ambiguity within the church around these issues. And so we want to help do away with some of that and help these churches get clear.
Yeah. No, I love that. And I love, so your website, churchclarity.org,
Mhm.
You can go, you can put in a zip code, and
Mhm.
that's a, I don't know, it's a beautiful thing that can be like, I don't know, it can be really helpful. And
Yeah.
now that I have found it, I've got some churches to submit to this,
Exactly.
because you
Please
can
do.
submit a church
Yeah.
and you
Yep.
guys will look at it
Yep.
and figure it
Yep.
out. And
Yep.
so, okay, two questions.
Yeah.
Question number one, we're just gonna, I'll do the pastor thing and we'll close with this.
In my final
um,
few moments.
right. If somebody who's listening is a queer person
Hmm.
and they are in this place where you were um, uh, not fully out to themselves, but maybe getting to their, also involved in a conservative faith community, what would you say to them?
I would say that when the Bible says that we are fearfully and wonderfully made, that we're made in the image of God, that's
Uh-huh.
true for us too. That's not
Yeah.
just for straight people, that's queer people. I don't believe that God makes mistakes. And so,
Mhm.
however you're feeling, to whatever those feelings are inside of you that feel as natural to you as anything else, those are placed by God for a reason. And so, anything that would tell you that you have to diminish yourself or
Yeah.
change something about yourself to be loved and accepted by God is not of God.
Yeah.
God created us in God's image, and there's that saying. There's the quote from the saint that the glory of God is man, or is a person fully alive.
Yeah.
And so, if you're in a space that's saying God loves you, but
Mhm.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
tough, but like get out of there, because
Mhm.
conversion therapy does not work. And
Yeah.
even if you're in a church community that does not use those words,
Mhm.
if they're saying that, you have to do something in order to be accepted,
Yeah.
that's just a red flag.
Yeah.
Run. Um,
So, what about queer people and allies
mhm,
who are in their community and they want to find a church? Like, this is, you
mhm.
specialize in this. Obviously, they need to first go to churchclarity.org. But
Yes.
if they're in a place where they don't have any church that's on your website, um,
Mhm,
what do they look for? What are
mhm,
the tips for finding an affirming church, and not, like happened to me recently, going to a church for a long time and realizing that you've been duped and they
mhm.
aren't actually affirming?
Yeah. I mean, Church Clarity is obviously a great resource, but we are a little backlogged on scoring churches. And so, I would say search out affirming church services that have church online.
Hmm.
My church in New York, I love Good Shepherd New York. We have an awesome online community, online experience. Like, if you don't have a church that you know of in your community,
Hmm.
there's a lot of great churches online, but online cannot replace real life in person
Hmm.
connection. But that can be a good substitute in the meantime while you look to find a church in your community. But I think, um, you just, uh, I don't think that it's wrong to
Hmm.
call a church, just how you would pick up the phone and call a church and say, what are your service times? When do you meet, etc. Just to pick up the phone and be like, hey, I'm looking for a church community and I just want to know, are you guys LGBTQ affirming? Like,
Yeah.
it's weird to have to make that phone call,
Right.
but I mean, why not? I think that you need to know what you're stepping into
Yeah.
when you're walking into a faith community. And if a church is like very ambiguous
Hmm.
about those things, like it's not a
Yeah.
safe place.
It's not.
And I think, like right now, like we're recording this in June, like see if
Right.
the church is hosting anything for Pride Month or
Yes.
acknowledging Pride Month. Scroll through their social media feed and see if there's
Hmm.
other people that look like or sound like you in the
Yeah.
feed. Like, you can do a little bit of homework just to kind of get a feel and a vibe for what the community looks like. And then also just see if there's other, queer folks or allies in your community who know of a church, and ask
Hmm.
them, like, hey, do you go to church? What does that look like? I mean,
Yeah.
it's simple things like that.
Yeah.
But
And I think when you call a church, it's important just to not let them answer an ambiguous question. Will you
correct.
marry people?
Yeah.
Can they serve in leadership? Right.
Hmm. Yeah.
And I'll just say, one of the things that I do is something called Not Church. And it is, we call it not church because somebody early on said, it's like all the things that they missed from church, like spiritual conversations and community and all of that. But nobody's telling them they're going to hell because they've got a tarot deck on their bedside table. And so it's like a space of all kinds of people of all kinds of religious identities and non-identities, like that come together, that are interested in spirituality, that are finding beliefs and practices that work for them and really being there for each other. Like somebody goes into surgery and people, people check up on them. And so it's affirming in another way as well, like wherever you are spiritually. And the other thing is a lot of people on there have religious trauma around being manipulated out of money.
Oh, God.
We don't take donations. It's pay for what you get. It's a subscription.
Cool. And
if anybody can't swing $3 a month, we just let them in for free because God's not a fucking capitalist. So yeah, if they're interested in that, if you're interested in that, I'd say go to patreon.com/skepticpastor and you can try it out. And here's the thing, $3 a month. If it doesn't work for you, you just stop paying. No big deal.
Love that. Very low barrier to entry.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Tim,
I'm so glad you do that.
Thank you so much for being here. This was wonderful. Everybody should go get the book, Conversion Therapy Dropout. Is there a place where they can buy it where you make more money than Amazon?
Sadly, I mean, there's no money to be made in book writing, so that's totally fine. But I would say, please go to your local independent bookstore.
Oh, please.
Like Amazon's easy, but like go to your independent bookstore. I literally personally emailed about 200 of them across the country to say, hey, will you stock my book? So support your local indie bookstore. If they don't have it, they can order it for you.
Yeah.
But if you go to conversiontherapydropoutbook.com, that's my website for the book, you can see links to a lot of different retailers and some other resources I've curated. So check it out.
That's great. And if people don't live near a local bookstore, you can also go to bookshop.org and you can select the bookstore to get the profits instead of Jeff Bezos. So
correct.
Yeah.
We love that.
All right. Thank you so much, Tim.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
That's it. That's the podcast. Shout out to the Choir Network, to Patheos, to Matthew and Keith, who make everything happen. Now, get out of here. Go do something to make the world a better place. Okay? We'll see you next time.